Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. This morning I have with me Matthew Perkins. He is the CEO and founder of Macro Oceans. And what we're going to talk about is his business that features kelp as a the integral part of the products that he's creating for beauty and beyond. Matthew, did I get it right?
Absolutely, you nailed it, Justine.
Awesome. So for those that are not familiar with macro oceans, can you tell us a little bit about what macro oceans is before we go into the story of what inspired you and how you built it?
Sure. So, thanks so much for having me on the show and giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about one of my passions in life, which is seaweed and the beauty space. So, Macro Oceans is a startup company. We're based in California. We Our mission really is to build a big kelp economy from seaweed grown and cultivated here in the United States, and turning it into all kinds of wonderful low carbon biomaterials. So we're a technology company that works with seaweed and transforms it into everyday materials that can be used to replace petrochemicals.
That sounds like you're really on a mission to change the world in a better way, impacting things that people use daily with ingredients that are really better for you than these other products. So, what inspired you to do this?
Well, I think if you step back and you think about what is going to happen to the world over the next, say, 20, 30 years, if we're really serious about tackling climate change and transitioning away from fossil fuels, then the majority of the world's petrochemicals that we rely on every day. So think about the surfactant in your soap, the lubricant in your engine, and most famously, the plastic that your drink comes in. All of those materials and chemicals are going to get remade by some bio-based alternative because we have to phase out fossil fuels. And so that really leads us to really requiring a lot more from the land. And as we all know, and as many of your listeners will know, the agricultural system is already very intense and puts a lot of pressure on the natural world and the environment. And so a few years back, I got excited about the potential to grow seaweed in the ocean. And the ocean is 70% of the world's surface, as you know, and you can grow seaweed without needing any additional fertilizers, no synthetic pesticides or other chemicals. It doesn't use fresh water. It doesn't compete for food crops because we still have to feed 10 billion people over the next 20, 30 years. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. There should be a lot more seaweed in our lives and in the world. And so that was really the inspiration for Macro Oceans. We transform it into products that people want. And by products, I mean ingredients, materials, chemicals that big brands and other CPG customers can use for consumers in everyday life.
That sounds, I mean, what a transition for people, right? Like, what a new way to look at things and think about the products that you're creating. I'm wondering how that was received initially before people were talking about this and it's become a little bit more familiar.
Well, people are always surprised. They sort of think, "How is this possible?" And in principle, it always sounds like a good idea, but you have to actually go through the hard work of making sure it actually does the things that the customers want. So in our case, we launched in the beauty space, and we are making a bioactive ingredient for skincare and hair care applications. It provides hydration, but people want to know that it's a real product, that it actually works and does provide hydration when you say it does. So you got to do the clinical trials and you've got to do the studies and you've got to formulate it in a way that makes it really easy for brands to use. And so turning an idea into reality is, I always tell people, is 9/10 perspiration, 1/10 inspiration. There's just a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes to make things ready for the consumer.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And when you started to talk about trials, trials are a big deal, right? I mean, they're expensive to do, they're time consuming, and not everybody does them because of it's prohibitively expensive and time consuming. So, why did you feel like it was so important that you did this, that you made this paramount as part of your development process?
Well, I think unfortunately there's a lot of greenwashing in the space and people making claims about their product being better and their product being more sustainable. And we took the view that we needed to generate data so that it was easy for people to believe, right? And these are third-party independent tests. We obviously do a lot of our own testing in-house, but then we want to have those tests and claims verified by third parties so that people know that it's worth the money that we're asking them to pay for it. So there's huge demand in the beauty industry to move away from the petrochemical soup that's on the back of every label. And I can hold up this bottle of soap here, hand soap, and if you try to read off all of the things that are in there, you need a PhD in chemistry. And really, the industry, like in food, wants to clean the label. People want more natural products, but people have become accustomed to products that are really effective. They really work, right? They provide the nutrition or the health benefits when you eat it. And for the beauty industry, it's the same. They want to make sure that their skin feels better. They want, if it says anti-wrinkle, they want to see those wrinkles go away. And so you need to be able to prove that your product is as good as or better than the synthetics that you're trying to replace. And so in order to convince customers to swap out these petrochemicals, we went and delivered some really impressive data on hydration. For example, we have an 80% improvement in immediate hydration versus a synthetic placebo, and that's really great because people know they can use this natural seaweed product and they can get a really great result, and so then it becomes a no-brainer. Then they love your sustainability and they want to swap. And so that's kind of why we went for the performance data.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned from these clinical trials?
I learned that there's a lot of different ways to do your studies, and there's a lot of subjective studies out there, and not a lot of rigorous science. And so, I think it depends on what you're trying to do. Obviously, if you're trying to produce a really inexpensive body wash, you're not going to pay top dollar for a high performance product. But in other cases, even stuff which is sold as expensive face creams really doesn't have real science behind it. And unfortunately, that's kind of the industry. So there's a lot of myth out there as well as real performance.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, the things that are in these things and the things that I see trying to decipher and break them down to something that I understand is really challenging. And I do that both with my food and the products I put on my face and my body. So I think it's encouraging to see somebody like yourself taking an initiative here to be able to include something in a product that we know what it is, we know where it comes from, and we know what it can do based on your trials. So you mentioned the first entree into this was in the beauty industry. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and tell me more specifics?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started with a species of brown seaweed called sugar kelp, which is native to the Pacific coast. So from California north to Alaska, it's also found in the Northeast and in Northern Europe. And we thought it's what farmers were growing, and we thought it was a pretty beautiful and interesting story. We met farmers up in Alaska. These are pristine places with abundant sort of wildlife and nature around, and it's just a perfect, wonderful place to grow high quality kelp. And we bought some kelp and we thought, right, let's see what we can make out of it. And we really spent a lot of time in the lab developing our process because we wanted to do something that was low energy. We wanted to do something that was zero waste. And we wanted to do something that really was using green chemistry as well, because there are a lot of harsh chemicals and solvents you can use to try and extract the bioactives or extract the different compounds you're looking for. But doing it in a sustainable way is actually quite complicated. So we spent a bunch of time really trying to understand what we could make. And one of the things we noticed early on is that seaweed when it's in the wilderness, it has really kind of three jobs to do. The first thing it's got to do is not dry out because it's in the water, and if it comes out of the water, it dies. Second of all, it's getting bashed around as it moves on rocks and sea life and whatever else. So it's got to kind of have these self-healing properties. And then it's getting hit by sunlight all the time. And so it's got to protect itself, from UV light. And these same things that the seaweed is really good at doing are actually the same benefits that you can derive for the skin. And so in the literature, we saw this correlation between things like, soothing of the skin after UV exposure, anti-inflammation, really good if you have been bruised or cut, and then obviously hydration, which is the primary thing we focused on initially. It really just got to lock that moisture in. And so all of these really cool things the seaweed just does naturally, we just were like, oh, we can bring this to the skin, and that's really our inspiration of what we did. So, so it's a natural product that really has performance, and it's fully traceable from the farm where we grow it all the way through our process to the customer. And so that level of traceability and sustainability is something that is a core part of our ethic, as well as the value proposition, honestly, to the brands. So we're very excited about it, and the impact and reception in the market has been wonderful.
I can only imagine. And as you're sitting here talking about this, I'm wondering, I don't know if you're able to share which clients you work with or who your first client was, but for them going from some of those other ingredients to now this, to better understand what the impact is that they're seeing, both for the planet as well as for the individuals.
Yeah, so we've actually worked with two different groups, two different parts of the industry, I should say. On the one hand, we've worked directly with brands, and we've built, relationships with companies that are really seaweed forward, like Captain Blankenship, which is a seaweed-focused hair care brand, Project Reef, which is a wonderful brand that's kind of come out of the ocean. And these brands have been thinking about marine ingredients and marine stories, and obviously there's a natural fit for us. But we've also really been making a lot of inroads into bigger clean beauty companies as well, which we'll be talking about more of them as they launch. And then the second group of people we've really actually found really warm and interesting, relationships we formed over the last, say, a year or so, are the contract manufacturers and people like KKT Innovations down in Florida. They really understand how difficult it is to deliver natural performance. They're really impressed by the performance and the clinical results we've had, and how easy it is to formulate with our product, and also the traceability, sustainability story. People are kind of really interested in that, and so people like KKT Innovations have been really wonderful, both on the formulation side and their connections into contract manufacturers too. So it's really kind of broad-based interest in innovation, which has put us kind of in the market and given us good traction.
Yeah, I can see that. And so when you're talking to these clients that you have that are, utilizing your product, are they sharing with you sort of what the experience of the customer is and any feedback?
Yeah, and that's one of the big things that we've heard good results about. So one of the things that happens, I don't know if you're familiar with the sort of 3 moments of truth. I believe it was developed by Procter and Gamble back in the day. So they have this kind of idea that a consumer likes to buy something or repeat purchase something if they meet the 3 moments of truth. And the first moment of truth is when they walk into the store and they have an experience with your product. They look at it and does it look appealing? The second moment of truth is when they try it. So in this case, putting it on your skin, feeling what it feels like. And the third moment of truth is when they get it home and they continue to use it. And if they have a great experience for all 3 touch points, then they're likely to be repeat customers. And for us, the story is the thing that is really appealing. They see it, oh, wow, seaweed, zero waste, sourced from Alaska. This is incredible. And then they try it. And this is where our clinical results really stand out, because you get this immediate improvement in hydration, and it has this really nice skin feel. When you put it on your skin, you're like, oh, wow, this really works. And then obviously when you get it home, you have that same experience. And so that is really the reason why I think people are so excited, is because the product works, and it has just a wonderful story.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm curious to know what these products are, potentially, so I could go try them. I mean, where do we find them?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be putting more of that online as it comes. They're going to be, some of them are launched already, some of them are launching, and they'll be in major, specialty retailers, big box retailers, some online stores as well. So
Can you
it's all coming.
share a couple of the ones that have already launched?
So some that have already launched, one is Sea Soak Skin, which is a small indie brand. Captain Blankenship, as I mentioned, are coming soon. Project Reef are coming soon. So there'll be some more coming out, and we'll definitely put them on our social media as they come.
That's great because I know that, as people listen to this, they're going to be intrigued. And the next question from them is, okay, so where do I buy it? Right? Like that was my next question. How do I buy it? I'm intrigued. I like hydrated skin. I like less wrinkles. I like better for the planet. All of it sounds good. So I want to go back to the beginning when you started this. Are you a first-time entrepreneur or have you founded other companies? What can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to this point?
Sure. So my background's actually in agriculture. I spent a decade working on the seed side, so looking at different products, different seed genetics, and how they get in the market to grow more food, essentially for people. And one of the miracles, I guess, of the last 50 years is just the amount of sheer calories we can grow in commodity crops, and there's a lot of downsides to that system we could talk about, but essentially it is pretty amazing how much technology is on the field, and so that's kind of where I've spent a good bulk of my time. And yeah, I'm second. This is my second company. The prior company was in the digital ag space, so I built a software service for farmers, helping them understand how different seeds would perform. So if you were, a corn grower in Iowa and you wanted to know what seed you should buy, we had a really big database of independent trials, again, performance data, which showed people, what works and what doesn't, based on where you are and what your practices were. And yeah, farmers really liked that. So we grew that business and sold it to another company. And so, yeah, this is my second startup.
So
A little
one
different,
might
but
say you're a serial
adjacent.
entrepreneur.
I try. Yeah, I don't know if the cereal bit comes in like, after three or when it becomes cereal, but yeah, this is my second rodeo, I guess you could say.
So what from after doing this first startup to the second one, what would you say some of the lessons that you learned were from the first one that you brought to the second one?
I think one of the important things to remember is that you have to hold on to something long enough to see if it's going to work, but don't stick with it too long. And it's a little bit counterintuitive because I think as an entrepreneur, we're incredibly impatient, and so we want stuff to happen. And sometimes you're not sure, is it actually working and I just need to give it a bit more time, or should I really be pivoting and trying something else? And so one of the things, I mean, I'll just give you an example from Macro Oceans. When we first launched this product, we were new to the beauty industry. We didn't know that many people. We had some challenges getting in front of the actual decision makers, of people who develop products and make decisions on R&D. And we were getting some good feedback from brand owners. So these are sort of founders who are also formulators. Those people are easy to get in front of. But as you move to bigger brands, it's pretty hard to find the right folks to get in front of. And it's based on trusted networks. And so we weren't sure, was the product what people wanted or was it not? Because we felt it was really good and we had some good data and we had some good feedback, but we weren't really sure. And then when we got connected to our head of sales, Alan, who's been in the industry, 15 plus years, who has all those trusted relationships, that's when it really took off, because he could get us in front of the right people. And so, one of the things to always remember is that sometimes it might feel like you're not making progress, but actually you might just be missing a critical piece of information. And so don't necessarily give up unless you understand why you want to change direction before you do it.
I think that's really keen advice because I think so often I think about it, we are in a rush. But if you look back at companies, and we can just use Oatly as an example, I had never heard of this company until all of a sudden it's in every coffee house being used by the barista. And it seemed like it was an overnight success. But it took them
Right.
8 years. I mean, it wasn't an overnight thing. Overnight it did not happen to get into Equator and all these coffee shops around the corner. So if we can use something like that as a barometer, right? To know that, to us, many things seem like they happen in a hot minute, but really they take patience and they take follow through and they take experience and time. But like you said, to manage that so you know when to cut fish, cut bait. Is it saying cut bait, right?
Yeah.
And go
Yeah.
versus sticking it around. There's like a fine line, right?
Yeah, and that's totally correct. And I think, in the case of ingredients and in the case of clean beauty, it's a longer term durable trend. People are not changing. Consumers want cleaner products. They want products that work. Like those things are not changing. And so we were playing in that theme. Sorry for the planes flying over. We were playing in that theme, and we knew that there was demand. So we needed to then debug our product and figure out what was wrong specifically about what we were doing. And it turned out that the product was great. We actually just didn't have the right go-to-market connections that we needed. And so when we solved that problem, it really began to move. And I think, that's so it's worth kind of picking apart the problem and trying to understand what are the things that are blocking you from having really good information about why to make a decision.
So one of the things you mentioned in regards to this was the accessibility of the network or not having connections or the right relationships in that network. How did you battle that or overcome that, I should say?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that I brought from agriculture. Agriculture is an extremely relationship driven business and industry. So if you think about a farmer, he lives in a certain geography and or she and they grow a crop. It's usually a family business. And if you're a, apple grower in Washington or a tomato grower in, Central Valley, you're going to be working with people who are in your area, right? So when some guy arrives from Silicon Valley or wherever and says, hey, you should try my new wonderful robot, the farmer will look at them and say, well, hold on a minute. Like, have you ever tried this thing? Does it work? How much is it, is it going to mess up my operation? And you've probably heard this story, a dozen times before. So in the beauty industry, that was kind of one of my early observations was actually beauty, at least on the ingredient and the product development side, works fairly similarly to agriculture. These are trusted long-term relationships where people, work in communities that are well established and in defined geographies. And so once we realized that, then we worked again to solve that problem, and that's how we kind of overcame that. But it takes sometimes people think that for when you come from outside the industry, you can change an industry's dynamic and structure. And very often that's not true. So, not everything can be disrupted. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I think some of these things, the foundation is so deep and that it takes a really long time to change that kind of narrative for people. So
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen in a hot minute, as much as we'd like it to. It takes time, it
Yeah.
takes trust, it takes, seeing it happen repeatedly so that you get enough data so that you know that it works on all these different levels. So as you're building this and you kicked it off in the beauty industry, what can we hope to see from these products as you expand to go beyond, as you say, beauty?
Yeah, so beauty for us is kind of the beachhead. We think that there's great opportunity to bring these natural products to consumers through brands, and we're going to continue to grow that business and come up with new flavors of our product with better performance and specific performance. So that's kind of definitely on our roadmap. And then beyond that, we're also thinking about ways that we can use kelp as a biomaterial to replace things that are in everyday life. So one of the areas we've been looking is in packaging, and there's a lot of really cool and interesting applications that can be done there. Now, in those industries, actually the same lessons kind of apply. We've got to come with performance. If we come with crazy, bad performance, no one's going to buy our product. Number one. Number two, we got to make sure the sustainability side of it lines up with their expectations. And number three, because these are commodities, packaging is cheap. we need to be price competitive. And so, those are all things that we're working on. But I think there's a great opportunity to use this really sustainable resource to actually, move us away from pretty dirty and honestly just damaging industries that are kind of the past, right? We're trying to build the future here. And so that's very much our mission, and we're going to kind of keep chugging away at that.
So as you're on that journey and you're using kelp as, a better for you product to, replace other ingredients, are there any other foods, if you will, that you see being integral to the future of beauty, clean beauty in particular?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really cool new things happening in beauty. One of the big trends is upcycling. You'll probably hear this word a little bit more in beauty than you might do in some other industries. Because in food, we're typically eating the primary product, but in beauty, we're actually quite interested in waste streams from people in other industries. So, for example, I was at a show the other day and I saw a hairbrush where the handle of the hairbrush was made out of wheat straw. And essentially, when they're harvesting wheat, you guys are, or the rest of us are all getting the grains, which is what they make the flour and the noodles and pasta and bread and all that stuff with. But there's a whole bunch of sort of straw left over, which traditionally just kind of gets left in the field to decompose. Well, somebody thought, what if I could take that and I could grind it up and do a few clever things to it and turn it into a material to replace the plastic that goes into hairbrushes. And so that's one tiny example, but there's many people looking at both ingredients as well as materials coming out of some of these waste streams from the food industry, which I think is super, super interesting and a trend to watch. Our I think our economy is going to generally shift more towards zero waste. So these essentially as a manufacturer, all of these waste streams are costing us money because we have to pay to get rid of them. So if you can turn them into a product and sell it, you're just improving your business. But in addition, it's really just part of the story here about how we get away from fossil derived materials and chemicals. And so I think you're going to see more and more of these innovations coming, especially in a place like California, which has a big food processing industry and a lot of smart people who want to try and make the world more sustainable.
And as you look forward, like 3 to 5 years, and people start to innovate more and lean on these products, the food as a replacement for some of these less desirable ingredients, what impact do you think, is there a percentage that you think we'll see change both in people's health and wellness as well as in our culture, in the environment?
Yeah, well, in the seaweed space, for us, it's one ton of seaweed grown is one ton of CO2 removed from the ocean. So that's a dry ton of seaweed is a ton of CO2 removed from the ocean, which helps us with combating ocean acidification and these types of things. Now, that impact is magnified when you can link it to displacement of a petroleum based product, right? And
Mhm.
so, one of the things which I think all of us need to do in order to be not greenwashing is to do life cycle analysis where we look at all of our inputs, we look at our manufacturing process, we look at what we displace, and we try to calculate what truly is the impact of each product. I think that is going to become more mainstream. More and more companies are doing this, especially the very big companies also have internal targets around some of these things, and they have no real idea or way of actually meeting them. And so that's an opportunity for a company like ours. And I think you're going to see more and more people do that. The reality is that we've got to move quickly, and the only way that we move quickly is when our solutions are economical. And we've
Right.
seen that with the uptake of solar, for example. Solar energy is now the cheapest form of electricity out there. And that's come through innovation on the solar panels and the installation and, getting them hooked up to the grid and all that stuff. And now people say, well, if I got to put new capacity in, I'm just going to go solar because it's the cheapest and the best for the environment. And I think for every category, that's going to be the way it happens. People are going to just start choosing these products because they have good performance, they are cost competitive, and they're just better for the world. So if we can do those three things, I think we're going to see a pretty rapid shift away from what is an old dirty industry.
Do you think we're always going to have the old dirty industry because people are familiar with it and like familiar? Or do you think people are going to get on board and really understand that we need to create change, and the best way to create change is to read the ingredients, understand the impact that they're having both on their health, their wellness, and the environment?
I think we need both. We're going to have the folks who are the early adopters who are reading the labels and who are trying to drive that change. And we're the ones, honestly, I'm an outlier here. I do look at my label, I do care where it comes from, but I'm pretty sure most people are not spending the time doing that. They don't have the time or the interest, and that's okay. We're helping to build the market, and as we build the market, more and more opportunities become available as these products get better and better and the prices come down. We'll be able to displace the other ones, and then before long, people are not even going to realize it that their Tide detergent is actually bio-based, and it's been that way, and it's just the same, and no one ever realized. And I think that's kind of how this is going to happen. And really, we just need a lot more innovation on the performance and the pricing side to get us there.
So this is all super exciting. If people want to find out more about you and what products they can look for, where would they go to find more information?
Well, you can come to our website. It's macro, macro dash oceans with an s.com, and or follow us on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and that's where we post all the information. We'll be promoting brands that launch with us, and so stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of really awesome kelp-based beauty products coming your way pretty soon here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew, for joining us today and helping us kick off this series. Or at least not kick it off, but talk about the impact of food on the future of beauty.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So for those that are tuning in today, don't forget we have a new episode every Tuesday. If you don't follow us, please do at essential.ingredients. And we look forward to continuing these conversations. See you later.